On page 132, 133, I actually have pictures and visuals so that you can see how our process of writing, plan, talk, and write works when you're doing all of these different whole group lessons. On page 132, I show the plan and talk. Now, for plan and talk, I told you that you have specific direct instructions lessons. Every whole group lesson will come with steps. So here was a narrative lesson. Here's the steps. Every lesson before you start, because I told you we had stages. As they master one stage, they move to the next and the next, so that you can keep increasing their sophistication of writing and finally meet their Common Core state standards that they need for writing. So we have our steps, and then we have over here an introduction to lessons, which is a chant, so that you're introducing using a chant so the kids know what they're going to be doing in that lesson. So you'll introduce a lesson using a chant. You'll follow steps when you teach the lesson. Here's your at-a-glance teacher steps. You may want to post the steps on a chart, and down below here are these exact steps, but they're kid-friendly, so the kids can follow those steps. If you look behind me, I have kid-friendly steps also up on this chart that I may be using. In this case, expository paragraph writing, stage 2, and these are my steps up here that I would be using when the kids are walking through their lessons. Over here, you will see an organizer. This is a finished plan for a story. So we had our steps, and then this was our organizer. After we planned out our story, then if you go to page 133, you'll see we were orally rehearsing the story, and finally, once the kids could say their story on their own, they were writing. And then we have a finished piece of writing here. So what do we do in these whole group lessons? When the children are learning how to independently write on their own, we introduce the lesson using a chant, follow steps in order to fill out the organizer. Then we orally rehearse the steps over and over, and children write that out. Now this is an overview of plan, talk, and write with first graders writing out the organizers on their own. Remember, kindergarten teachers, you would be making an organizer, and the kids and you would just be planning the stories in teacher write and interactive writing. You're not going to be doing this whole group where kids write their own story because it's too difficult for them at this level. Kindergarten teachers, these steps are for interactive writing and teacher write. First grade teachers, these steps are going to be for teacher write, interactive writing, and whole group instructional level lessons. Turn to page 134. So we just reviewed the process of writing, where you plan, talk, and write. We have to look at that gradual release of responsibility. In other words, when I'm doing these whole group lessons with the students, I want to eventually release responsibility to them so that they can independently write their own stories, information, or opinions on their own following the steps. How does that gradual release work? Kinder, you're only using these steps, interactive writing and teacher write. First grade, you're going to use these steps, interactive writing, teacher write, and whole group instructional lessons. So this model is only for the first grade teachers. When you're in the whole group lessons at that instructional level, how do you eventually make these whole group lessons so that every child can independently use the steps to build their own organizer and write it out? Well, first you start these lessons whole group. That means everyone's going to be writing the same story. These lessons are usually going to last every day 30 to 40 minutes. So everybody is doing this whole group lesson with you for 30 to 40 minutes. That means that you probably won't finish the story in one day. So you take the papers, pass them out, and the next day you continue on wherever you are in the lesson. What are you doing this lesson? Why are you doing this whole group? Because your teaching point is for the children to learn the steps in order to write whatever genre you're working on. Now we move to slowly releasing responsibility. So I'm working whole group, we're all filling in an organizer together, learning how to do that following steps. Now I'll start having some children, my higher level students, who get the steps, who now can do more of this on their own. So I don't just release them to go do one on their own. I partner the kids up. So I will have those high kids partnered up together, and they will go use the steps to write their own story, information, opinions. And they'll together they're organizers. They'll each have their own page, their own organizer, but they'll walk through the steps together to plan a story or information together. In these pairs, in these partners, each will have their own blank paper, but together they'll be working together, following the steps to plan a story or information or opinion writing. So notice I have high kids here that I've released because they can now do this together. Where am I with the other students during this 30 to 40 minute time? I'm still here in the whole group process. So I'll be working whole group with children who still are not able to do this on their own, while I have high kids who are writing and planning their organizers together as partners. After I've done several stories, whole group, with these remaining students, I may have some children who are my medium level ability children who are now going to be partnered up following the steps. Notice I'm partnering kids up with likability. That's critical because you don't want one doing all the work. This is a time for both to be thinking. So you want to match them up at their ability levels. So now I have highs and mediums planning using steps, writing their own stories together. But I'm still working with the low students walking through that step in that whole group model where they need to focus on learning the steps. Eventually, my lows will be put into partners. Well, by the time my lows are in partners, my highs and medium have done several stories as partners, and now they'll start writing their own stories or information or opinions on their own. But my lows will remain in partners. Now, sometimes I may need to continue giving them extra help, and that's easy when they're in partners because I can get to them. After a while, my lows have been writing in the partner level, and what are they focusing on? The steps to write their own text, their own piece of information or stories, and then finally, they'll be released where they write independently on their own. This is the format that we are trying to reach. But it does take that slow release of responsibility where we go from whole group to partners to independently writing. Now, as we go on to the writing lessons, what you're going to see is we will have the 3 genres that the Common Core state standards are requiring. Hence, we have 3 separate chapters of writing lessons. We have a narrative chapter, informative explanatory, and opinion writing. In each one of these chapters, you're going to see stages of writing lessons. We have stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. For each one of these genres, there's 4 different stages of writing with assigned grade levels. To complete this overview of our whole group writing lessons, on page 135, we have our scope and sequence of the writing lessons. So now you have to determine which lessons are you going to use. Well, first of all, notice I have narrative, informative, explanatory, and opinion writing here. All 3 of these genres have 4 stages each that you will use to teach your children how to write. Now let me assign the stages to your different grade levels. Kindergarten, for narratives, informative, explanatory, and opinion writing, you will only be teaching stages 1 and 2 for each one of those genres. First grade, you have assigned to you stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 for every genre. Now this will also make you ask, well, which stage am I starting at? As you go through the next chapters, what you're going to find is these lessons that you're going to teach to your children, specific direct instruction, and how you'll use this plan, talk, and write process to slowly release students so they use these steps independently on their own to write their own stories, information, or opinions.